Thank you very, very much for that wonderful, warm welcome. Tolpuddle reminds us of the roots of our movement, in working people organising together for a better life. The bravery, determination, endurance of those early trade unionists inspires us today. They understood the overriding importance of solidarity, no matter how tough the circumstances. And trade unions, let's be clear about this, are as necessary today as ever, not least in a region like this. 40% of the jobs in Devon and Cornwall earn less than the living wage. That makes Devon and Cornwall the low-pay capital counties of the whole of the UK. Something's got to be done about that. Together we are stronger. United we stand. Divided we fall. These are not just slogans of the labour movement, but enduring truths for all of us, for all time. Today, I want to use this as a chance of speaking to you for a bit and stand back and reflect on the huge changes that have taken place in Britain, in our politics and in our party, how we got here and the direction we now need to take. By any measure, this has been an extraordinary few months for all of us in the Labour Party and in British politics across the whole country. In 6 months, we've gone from the demoralisation of a general election defeat, although there were brilliant and fantastic campaigns fought to try and wrest the victory in that campaign, to what can only be described as an eruption of grassroots democracy in our political system. 2 months ago, that tide of people demanding a real political alternative delivered a landslide in the Labour leadership election. I am, of course, humbled by the huge support and mandate I've been given. It's been a roller coaster, no doubt about that, but I also know it's not about me personally. It's about a thirst for a different kind of politics, which I'm honoured to help give voice to. And we have drawn strength from the huge increase in numbers that turned out across the country to join what is now a deeply rooted movement for kind of change for a different Britain. Labour Party members and supporters in hugely expanded numbers, but also hundreds of thousands who've never been involved in politics before, and that was what was so inspiring about the summer. What seemed to come out of nowhere has certainly taken the powers that be by surprise. We know what's happened in the Labour Party, with deep roots, something that's been building up in this country and across the world for a lot of years. It's been a political rebirth. People are fed up with the so-called free market system that has delivered grotesque inequality, stagnating living standards for the many, calamitous foreign wars without end, and a political stitch-up which leaves the vast majority of people shut out of any power or any influence on their own lives. Anti-austerity politics and the demand for an alternative has led to the rise of new movements and parties in one country after another. But in Britain, it's happened in the heart of traditional politics, in our party, the Labour Party, which is something we should all be actually very, very proud of, because it's exactly what Labour was founded for, to be the voice for the many of social justice, progressive change from the bottom up. Now, of course, it's been a very bumpy couple of months. I know that better than anybody else. The sort of change represented by an election like we went through was always going to be a difficult transition. But I ask you to think of this. But amid all the sound and fury, and some of the stuff that's been said has been truly off the wall, that change is already making itself felt. Since we formed our new leadership team and shadow cabinet, Labour is now an unequivocally anti-austerity party.
What question on the back row?
Thank you. My name's Leslie Mansell. I'm from the Unite Union and also a parish councillor. I really welcome what Jeremy has been doing and saying about really returning the party to the members rather than this presidential American style, which really hasn't worked. And I've been in this party for a long time, through thick and thin, most of it's thin. I'd just like to pick up on a point that Thomas made, which is really important, where he talked about a working party from the NEC. Now, we've seen momentum setting up, and that seems to be replicating a lot of what's been happening. But David Miliband also set up something called Movement for Change, and we work with them out in Radstock in North East Somerset. So I'm wondering if that is still going, if we should be perhaps linking with that, or whether we should be linking more with Movement for Change.
there are lots of groups in the party, and people go and organise in different campaigns and, you know, have a particular sort of political hue. For me, this is about what culture have we got in the party. And, you know, there's always been sort of, for me, three broad pillars of thought that build on who we are as a party, what we are as a party. You've got your kind of classic socialist position of people who believe in a very strong state with far more public ownership. You've got your pure pro-European social democratic strand that you can trace back to the Gates Alliance, and then you've got social reformers and ethical socialists from, you know, the Christian socialist tradition. And in 115 years of history, we've more or less, those three traditions have more or less rubbed up against each other, and we've worked it. You know, Harold Wilson managed to have Roy Jenkins and Tony Benn in his cabinet. And so it's about the culture of respecting difference. You know, we're on a journey together, and if I've got worries, it's that there is a growing intolerance with differing views in the party, and I think we all have to work at that, and we lead by example on that as individuals. And so I've been concerned about the way people conduct themselves on social media, for example, and I think we probably need to make sure we've got a social media code about how people conduct themselves. But that's a problem to have, isn't it? You know, we've got all these new members and supporters, 600,000 now, we're doubling membership in lots of constituencies. I'm not sure others have that challenge than the other one, which is a party that is dwindling in every community and not hearing what communities are telling them and not being a voice for communities. And, you know, if we can get to 2020, having restated the case of community organising and found new ways to give our members the power to organise themselves, I think we'll be in a much better place.
I'll finish on the one piece of really good news that we've got in the last couple of weeks. In the 2005 Labour general election, the Labour Party was left with debts of in excess of £24 million. Over the last 10 years, the Labour Party, through the Business Board and the National Executive, have worked to pay down all of those loans to the banks and those loans to individuals. And this week at the National Executive meeting, it was announced that the Labour Party, for the first time in many years, is completely debt-free. Just a pity that George Osborne isn't as good as that.
Anna, look, Jeremy himself has said he wants to have an open and honest debate. That's the environment we're in at the moment. He himself is making a virtue of shadow cabinet ministers not always agreeing with him. So we're going to have to get used to that as a party for a bit. But what's so important is that we do it in a civilised and respectful way, without this kind of abuse that we've seen directed against people like Chuka Umunni yesterday. Absolutely outrageous racist abuse by a Labour Party member against a senior Labour politician. Or Jess Phillips, who's received death threats, rape threats. She's had to call in the police. So look, we're not always going to agree on everything. And Jeremy himself has said that he got the whole thing about using lethal violence wrong. He had to come out the next day and clarify it. So don't get too worked up about it, but just let's keep it civilised. We're not always going to agree. And actually, it's important at the moment as a party. We are seen to be having a mature and open debate. If we were all some sort of automatons always saying rah rah rah, isn't it all marvellous, people wouldn't have any confidence in us. They wouldn't believe us because they would know it's not true. So what is important is we have an open debate, we disagree respectfully with each other, we don't resort to abuse, as Jeremy said quite clearly in his speech, which I thought was a very welcome, clear condemnation of abuse. And if any of you is receiving any abuse online or elsewhere, please report it to Ian, because Ian has issued an open invitation to all party members and MPs who are getting this abuse to report it to him, and he will take action. That's what we do in a democratic party.
Our party needs to be at the heart of this democratisation drive as well. Too often in the past, the democratic decisions of our conference have been ignored by the party leadership. To many, it's felt like a small cabal in Westminster decides, while you're expected to be the loyal foot soldiers pounding the streets for Labour. I've spent my life in the Labour Party. I fully understand those feelings. I've held every position there is at constituency level in the party, starting as a ward collector in the 1960s. But we want people to be able to participate in politics, have a direct voice in every part of their lives. Our leadership election gave us an insight into just what can be achieved. 400,000 people were mobilised to vote. More than half of those voted online. Give our grassroots members and supporters a real say. People need to have that voice every day, all the time, so they're part of the general political debate. Political debate shouldn't be exclusively in Westminster and council chambers. We want to see this democratic revolution extend to our party, opening up decision-making to the hundreds of thousands of new members and supporters that have joined us since May. This is an opportunity to remake our party as the real social movement organised and rooted in our communities. It's not, absolutely not, about fighting sectarian battles or settling political scores. It's about being open to the people we seek to represent, giving them a voice through our organisation and policy making, and drawing members into political action.